Nothing is easy. Nothing is free. If you want to be successful, you have to pay the price. Alibaba, 18 years to today's size. Yeah, we are lucky, but we work much harder than most of the people. Early days in my company, when some ideas come to my desk, Jack, this is a great idea, and I look at everybody. Everybody say it is a good idea, I normally throw into the rubbish. Because everybody say it is good, then all the other people think of. If everybody say this is going to be very tough, I'm very interested in that tough question. And I pick up and say, how can we do it in a different way? This is to be unique, to be different. And the third, this is my advice, and this is also I'm telling myself every day. Today is very tough. Tomorrow is more tougher. The day after tomorrow is beautiful, but most people die tomorrow evening.
To challenge myself to do things that I didn't think I could do, to put myself in uncomfortable situations. We all get, I would say to a young person, you can choose a life of ease and comfort, or you can choose a life of service and adventure. Which one of those, when you're 90 years old, are you going to be more proud of?
So when I was young, I didn't really know what I was going to do when I got older. People kept asking me, but then eventually I thought that the idea of inventing things would be really cool. And the reason I thought that was because I read a quote from Arthur C. Clarke, which said that a sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And that's really true. If you go back, say, 300 years, the things that we take for granted today would be, you'd be burned at the stake for. Being able to fly, that's crazy. Being able to see over long distances, being able to communicate, having effectively, with the internet, a group mind of sorts, and having access to all the world's information instantly from almost anywhere on the earth. This is stuff that really would be magic, or would be considered magic in times past. In fact, I think it actually goes beyond that, because there are many things that we take for granted today that weren't even imagined in times past. They weren't even in the realm of magic. So it actually goes beyond that. So I thought, well, if I can do some of those things, basically if I can advance technology, then that's like magic, and that would be really cool. And I also had sort of a slight existential crisis, because I was trying to figure out what does it all mean? Like, what's the purpose of things? And I came to the conclusion that if we can advance the knowledge of the world, if we can do things that expand the scope and scale of consciousness, then we're better able to ask the right questions and become more enlightened, and that's really the only way forward. I think the overarching point I want to make is that you guys are the magicians of the 21st century. Don't let anything hold you back. Imagination is the limit, and go out there and create some magic.
I have a story about following dreams, or maybe more accurately, it's a story about finding a path to make those dreams real. You know what it's like to wake up in the middle of the night with a vivid dream? And you know how if you don't have a pencil and pad by the bed, it will be completely gone by the next morning. I had one of those dreams when I was 23. When I suddenly woke up, I was thinking, what if we could download the whole web and just keep the links? And I grabbed a pen and started writing. Sometimes it's important to wake up and stop dreaming.
Facebook wasn't the first thing I built. I also built chat systems and games, study tools and music players, and I'm not alone. J.K. Rowling got rejected 12 times before she finally wrote and published Harry Potter. Even Beyoncé had to make hundreds of songs to get Halo. The greatest successes come from having the freedom to fail. Ideas don't come out fully formed. They only become clear as you work on them. You just have to get started. A change in the world that seems so clear that you are sure someone else is going to do it. But they're not. You will.
I believe the answer is that deep inside of all of us, there's a primal desire to do something important with our lives. And then they say you're crazy. So remember this, graduates. When people start telling you that you're crazy, you just might be onto the most important innovation in your life.
There's really no magic secret to it. There's not like there's some formula which tells you if you're going to do this problem, then that problem, then the other problem, you'll magically achieve success. I mean, it comes down to some preference, some intuition, and mostly, truthfully, comes down to luck. But if you never try, you know you will not succeed. And by trying in areas that you think might be fruitful, then eventually you are likely to end up with a success.
Be hardcore. Hardcore is really hard to define, but it is my favorite expression. Hardcore. Hardcore means tenacious. Hardcore means long-term. Hardcore means determined. I don't care what you do. You're going to have to be patient and industrious and really stay after things. Things will not necessarily come to you, poof, immediately and overnight. You're going to have to be determined and long-term.
I say that, you should pursue your passion. If you're passionate about something and you work hard, then I think you'll be successful. If you start a business because you think you're going to make a lot of money at it, then you probably won't be successful, because that's the wrong reason to start a business. You have to really believe in what you're doing, be passionate enough about it so that you will put in the hours and the hard work that it takes to actually succeed there, and then you'll be successful. And I have a couple other little things I tell them. I say, when you look at the accomplishments of accomplished people, and you say, boy, that must have been really hard. When you look at something that looks hard, that was probably easy. And conversely, when you look at something that looks easy, that was probably hard. And so you're never going to know which is which until you actually go and do it. So just go and do it, try, learn from it. You'll fail at some things. That's a learning experience that you need so that you can take that on to the next experience. And don't let people who you may respect and who you believe know what they're talking about, don't let them tell you it can't be done. Because often they will tell you it can't be done, and it's just because they don't have the courage to try it.
I've always thought that each person invented himself for whatever reasons, through whatever circumstance, through whatever he has gone through, that we are each a figment of our own imagination. And some people have a greater ability to imagine than others.
We started noticing companies had something in common. Companies that were around for a really long time had a clear mission. And they had a clear sense of values. They had a shared way of doing something that was unique to them and was really, really special. And so then Joe and I, when we were 3 people, decided to look around companies. I noticed Apple, Steve Jobs talked about his core value was that he believed people with passion could change the world. And he said our products changed, but our value never had.
Rule number 1. You need to know that nothing replaces actually doing the work. Whenever a young person tells me they aspire to be an entrepreneur, the first question I ask them is why. For many, they think it's, a great way to get rich quick. I'm going to write an app, I'm going to build a company, make a few $1 million before I'm 25. Look, that can happen, but frankly, that's awfully rare. The usual scenario is that successful entrepreneurs spend endless hours, days, years, toiling away for little time, little pay, and zero glamour. And in all honesty, that's where the joy of success actually resides. Meant grinding every single day. It means putting in the 10,000 hours necessary to become a master of your craft. And I'll tell you, one of the great leaders of our time, Muhammad Ali, once said, "I hated every minute of training, but I thought to myself, suffer now and live the rest of your life as a champion." So grind it out and live your life as a champion.
Courage, integrity, and commitment. And those are three things that I basically live my life by. And those three words, those three terms have worked for me. I don't work for everybody. But you talk about courage. Come back to having the courage of your convictions. The ability to face failure. As I say, there's nothing wrong with failing. Pick yourself up and try it again. You're never going to know how good you really are until you go out and you face failure. Integrity, that's a given. If you don't have integrity, you have nothing. You can't buy it. You can have all the money in the world. But if you're not a moral and an ethical person, you really have nothing, because you only have one thing to sell in life, and that's yourself. And commitment to me is the ability to stick to something. You make up your mind. I hate people that go out and always talk about they're going to do this, they're going to do that, and they never do it. And I said, quit talking about it, just go do it. I can't do it. They don't know whether they can do it or they can't do it until they try it. But it's easy, I can't do it. I tell my kids, let's just take that word out of your vocabulary, because the word can't isn't in your vocabulary until you've really made an attempt to try it. And if you've really tried something and you've given it your best effort, that's all I ever ask of you. But make a commitment to do something. You have a vision? Fine. It's not going to be a straight road to the goal line. It's going to be a lot of zigs and zags and throwing for some losses. The other thing I say to my children, I said, be on that field. Don't sit on the sideline. Don't sit on the sideline and focus on what other people are doing. And don't be on that sideline and putting your leg out trying to trip the runner as he comes down the side. You get on that field and you play.
I think the biggest thing to do, the hardest thing to do is start. You have all these ideas and everyone has an idea, but it's really about executing the idea and building the idea and attracting other people to help you work on the idea. That is the biggest challenge.
Do the work. Most people don't do the work. I got this idea. Then you talk to 10 friends. Oh, they love my idea. Oh, I don't know anybody. Do the work. Sweat equity goes so much further than anything else, but most people, they're not willing to do the work. Oh, this is a great idea. Let's go have a beer. This is a great idea. Let's go to the movie. Great idea. No, you're going to have to give something up to start a successful company. It just doesn't come to you. You've got to go get it. You've got to put in the time. You've got to put in the effort, and you've got to do the work. And I just think most people don't. Passion is the biggest lie to every entrepreneur, because all of us are passionate about something. And just because you get passionate about something that you can start a business in doesn't mean it's a good business. Don't follow your dreams, follow your effort. You'll find that the harder you work at something, the better you are. The better you are, the better chance you have of success.
To all you kids down there, I was once a child with a dream, looking up to the stars. Now I'm an adult in a spaceship with lots of other wonderful adults looking down to our beautiful, beautiful Earth. To the next generation of dreamers, if we can do this, just imagine what you can do.
I've met a lot of people over the last 30, 40 years who come up to me and said, I had that idea about coffee. Really? What'd you do? I had it before you did. Okay. Don't let anyone tell you that your dreams cannot come true. And when I speak to young kids, I tell people, dream big and dream bigger. And use your disappointments and some of your failures as an opportunity to learn. Not to give up. Not to turn away. You don't want to get to a point in life where you're bitter and you're angry because someone told you what you were dreaming could not come true. Because you gave up. Everyone in this room has the ability, the skill and the opportunity to do something significant and great.
From time to time, you may stumble, fall. You will for sure count on this. No doubt. You will have questions and you will have doubts about your path. But I know this, if you're willing to listen, to be guided by that still small voice that is the GPS within yourself, to find out what makes you come alive, you will be more than okay. You will be happy, you will be successful, and you will make a difference in the world.
You already have inside of you all of the amazing things you need to follow the dreams that you have. And if you get stuck along the way, there is a ton of free information available on the internet. Have faith in yourself and the person you're going to become. Know that you are capable of all of the growth that will be expected of you and that you expect from yourself. You will tackle every challenge headed your way. And if you don't, it won't be for lack of trying. Someone will always have an opinion about you. Whatever you do won't ever be enough. So find something important to you. Find something that you love.
Make sure you talk with yourself often and think about what gives you meaning and what gives you passion, and then pursue it. And don't settle for seconds. Do what you believe in and what gives you meaning, because if you find what you believe in, then you've won just by following that journey, regardless of how far you get in terms of financial success or whatever. What matters is that you find something that you care about.
First, genius plans and eureka moments are overrated. Follow your hunches. Try things and be open to where your gut tells you to go next. You don't have to set out to change the world. Just find a way to make something worthwhile easier for other people, and you just might change the world along the way. Second, no matter where you are, never doubt that you can be a part of something big and make an impact. There's no such thing as a flyover state anymore. You're just as connected as anyone else. Third, work hard for a long time. And focus on your growth, not your status. It's cliche advice, but the truth is most people are not willing to do it. So it's still an advantage. And fourth, be an optimist.
Probably is taking risk intelligently. Most people are pretty freaked out about risk. Most people want stability in what they're doing. And by the way, part of our thing is adaptability is the new stability, like learning and so forth. It can be a little challenging, but you can do it actually. It isn't, you have to be, jump 20 feet. It's just try new things a little bit and be willing to fail a little bit initially as you're doing that and kind of do that. And that's part of taking risk intelligently. Because when you take risks, you'll learn something. When you take risks, you might get a breakout opportunity. When you take risk, you may discover something amazing about yourself. And so figure out how to take small risks intelligently. Life is a team sport, not a solo sport. Have your team help you, your allies, your friendlies. Evaluate the risk, navigate it, make it lesser, recover from it easily. But that's probably the thing that most people would find most challenging.
I think that the lesson there is, at least for me, maybe you guys will be different, maybe you have much more insight into what you may be doing, but for me, the journey was not predictable at all. And it goes sort of back to the Lincoln quote, is the only thing I believe you can do is prepare.
And that is the entrepreneurial spirit, to ignore the odds and charge ahead. You saw in there, if you're watching, to believe the harder I work, the luckier I get. To make fear of failure and dread of doing something you're not meant to do for the rest of your life exceed the fear of the unknown.
There are a few common attributes that I see in founders. One we discussed is a level of passion. Usually that's about the problem you're solving, but it can also be around building a great business. I know a lot of founders are much more driven by that than in what they actually do, and I know founders kind of on the other end of the spectrum where they just live and breathe, what their business does. So that's number one. I'd say another common trait I see is a willingness to take risk and challenge yourself and put yourself in uncomfortable situations. So trying new things, pushing yourself. A lot of my experience in building Bolt started from just getting out there and trying a ton of new business ideas and working with other founders and building like their businesses for them as a consultant. So that's number two. And then number three, this is a really key one. Your ability to build your business is entirely related to your ability to attract a great team. So great founders surround themselves with amazing people and have the ability to convince amazing people to join their vision.
I think people focus too much on the past and focus too much on regret. Even like when you deal with schools, like you take like the slave idea. My point is, I've heard of history class. I've never heard of a class that breaks down how you balance a checkbook or how you control your finances, which my father never taught me that. And I've never heard of a future class. So they keep us so focused on history that we start to believe that it actually repeats itself. And we become overly traditional, and we can't advance as a race of beings. We get too caught up in the past and what everyone's saying and what everyone's tweeting. And sometimes you just have to be fearless enough to break the simulation.
Well, I think I do take time for myself, and I think that's very important. And even going to Japan and seeing so many amazing things, I got so many great ideas. And when you do take time for yourself, that's when like the magic happens and these ideas come. And I think no matter who you are, what you do, if you don't take time for yourself, you can never rejuvenate and you can never get back that creative spark. So I do take time off, and I do get a lot of ideas from my travels and just being around people that give me ideas and inspire me. So I think that is really important.
What's it feel like? Like, what does all this feel like? What's it feel like to innovate, to be an entrepreneur? My view of the road went from this to this. I couldn't see anything. And the only thing that really saved me was in the United States, every mile they put a post with a reflector on it, and it's like that little thing. It's got a little post and a reflector. Now here's the problem, folks. I couldn't see for a mile. And the smart thing to do, the logical thing to do, is to pull over. And I'm not like my friend Bob. I'm a guy who believes in pulling over, but I've also had a lot of math, and I can't stop myself sometimes from doing math in my head. And here's the math that I'm doing. I am driving a 2,700-pound white Toyota Tercel. Somewhere behind me is a plow truck that weighs 16,000 pounds, is driving at 60 miles an hour by a guy who's probably been awake for a day and a half. I would love to pull off the road, but I don't know where the road is. And I'm pretty sure that if I pull off and I'm wrong, I will be killed. And so I drive on. And the driving is pretty horrible because I don't really know where the road is. And I only occasionally get these reminders of where I think the road should be. And sometimes I have to veer back on. And that's what it feels like. I've started 6 companies. I've just started a nonprofit. I guess you'd call that 7. I thought I'd be better than this by now, but I'm not. Every time I feel the same way I felt on this terrible ski trip journey, which is that there's a giant truck behind me that is going to kill me if I don't keep going. And I wish it was a sunny day, and I wish I could see the road ahead of me, but I can't. I just drive on. And I get these occasional signposts that let me know if I'm doing well or not. And it's not about being bold, at least not in my case. I'm sure there are people who are bold. I am not one of them. I'm just a guy who keeps driving.
So the thing is, I'm not like a visionary person in terms of like that I know what will work and not. What I do know, however, is that if you keep executing, like the right person will figure out a way to sell umbrellas in Sahara, because they'll figure out that it's for sun protection, or they'll figure out a way where it can generate electricity or something like that. But it's really all about execution, and ideas is 5%, execution is 95%.
Well, the good news and bad news around entrepreneurship now, in many sectors and many places, it's a little easier to get started. That's the good news. The bad news is a lot of people are starting and doing similar things. So the battle is now for more attention, getting noticed, and getting the right partners to take the business to the next level. And partnership is really important. It's going to be one of the real defining aspects of the next era of entrepreneurship. It's not just about what you do on your own. It's how you partner with other organizations to take your idea and really give it scale. That's the best way to really break through. Don't give up. There are a lot of reasons to keep fighting that battle. In the early days for us with AOL, there were some difficult days where we'd have to take a step back, lay off people. Didn't look like the company was going to make it, but we stuck with it. And finally, after a decade, we broke through. So if you really believe in your idea, you're passionate about the idea, you believe that idea can change the world, never give up. Keep fighting. Eventually, you'll break through.
I mean, I think the biggest thing that you can do is be crystal clear about the minimum set of things that are hard decisions and let go of the things where you're not sure. And if you can be crystal clear on, hey, this is not a suggestion, this is like what we're going to do, and then everything else, like empower the team to do it, I think people respond actually really well to that. And I think when you found a company, like part of the fun is you're kind of one of the team, like your peers. And at some point, like if you don't reconcile the fact that your job is to lead, and you're actually not a peer, I don't think you can be effective. That's something, honestly, it's really hard. It's a really hard part for both you, and it's a really hard part for members of the team that were there when there were 8 people, and you really were peers, and you were just like, oh, we're building this thing. But if you don't step into that role, like that vacuum creates a tremendous amount of churn. And that's something that I think, I'm still working on getting better at.
Learned enough to be dangerous. And this is like one of the lessons in entrepreneurship, is that like you don't have to be the best, but you have to be dangerous, right? You have to learn just enough to be dangerous to build an idea, concept it, and show it to the world. The other thing is be relentless, okay? The one thing everyone's going to tell you is that your idea is bad and is never gonna work. Do you know why? Because 99% of ideas don't work. And if someone says they're not gonna work, they're generally right. And because they're generally right, they convince themselves that no ideas work. But it turns out you have to be your own advocate, and you have to believe that it's going to work.
Throughout our 28-year history, when we have had failures, those have ultimately resulted in some of the greatest successes we've ever had. You talk about those, particularly when someone comes to see you and they say, yeah, feeling really bad because this didn't work out. Okay, well, let me tell you about some other things that didn't work out that we learned a lot from. And let's pick ourselves back up and let's figure out what we learned from this and how we go apply that next time. When you're in the zone of doing things that no one's ever done before, if you're only succeeding, you're not taking enough risk.
Google, like they were rejected when they wanted to sell the company for $1 million to Yahoo. And so the point is, all these things start with much more modest ambitions, and even sort of the great entrepreneurs. And the goal, as you sort of reach each of these new milestones, you're like, okay, the goalposts move back, and so your ambitions become much broader over time. And this is kind of, all this doesn't happen overnight. So when you kind of look at, I talked at the beginning of how kind of daunting everything seemed, because there's like, the little sort of corner of stuff that and this world of stuff that you don't. Often that can be enough of a barrier to stop people from even getting started. So just realize that you have to be systematic about how you learn all these things, but this all happens one day at a time.
Not to be overly competitive, that the tracks force you to compete. Mm-hmm. So you compete, you win, you cycle and repeat, and you need to find something where you're not always just looking at the people around you, and you have some other reference point. This is sort of more of a religious cut on this, but I'm always struck by how the 10 Commandments, they're sort of they're kind of the first and last in some sense are maybe the important ones, the end ones. The first one is you should only look to God. There's only one God, and you should worship him. And then the last one is you shouldn't covet anything that belongs to your neighbor, and so that you shouldn't look at the people around you too much. And so we need to find some way to look up, and not to look around, because when we look around, it's not that we figure out what to do. It just ends up being the hyper copycat, mimetic, crazed environment. And that's so it's always, there needs to be more of you need to find some transcendence. I think this is what's powerful about the Peterson message. It's, it can't just be fashion. It can't just be what everybody thinks, because that's just you're just going to be competing with people like crazy.
I find that quite often when you go to somebody for advice, it's usually what's baked in is their own personal experience. And so quite often when you go and ask for advice, you know what is going to come back before you ask it, if you know that person well. So I find that probably the best advice that I get is typically just stories from somebody's personal experience that then I can sort of digest and then figure out how it may or may not be appropriate to to the situation that I'm in.
So that's a great question. So it depends on the role. And I'd say one of the things that I've gotten much better at over the past 10 years is moving from feelings and hard conversations that I'm avoiding that are in my head to just having those conversations faster or making a change. It's the difference between thinking about and talking about going to the gym and complaining, or going to the gym. One actually requires effort and it hurts you. You just have to make those hard decisions sooner.
See, here's the thing. One of the things I like to tell people is that I've never invented anything.
Right.
Everything that I do has been written about in science fiction for decades. I'm just figuring out the right time to pull dusty ideas off the shelf and make them real. When it comes to actually predicting the future, like out of whole cloth, boy, that's really hard. And I just want to be honest, I can't predict a lot of this stuff, because a lot of the things that are happening, they're beyond even what you would expect in sci-fi. I've talked with friends a lot about, if you had written sci-fi that said that, there's going to be a pandemic, and the particular social issues of the pandemic are going to be revolving around whether or not you wear a mask, and that's going to become politicized in the middle of an election, it would have seemed unreal and kind of not it would have seemed not plausible. And sometimes the real world is stranger than fiction.
The two things we really zero in on people are, two things. They sound simple, they end up being very difficult. Courage and genius. Courage is the one we talk about a lot because it's the one that people can learn. Courage, which is to say not giving up in the face of adversity, just being absolutely determined to succeed, is something that you can force yourself to do. It can be very painful. You can force yourself to do it. The genius part is a little bit hard to force yourself to do. Courage without genius might not get you where you need to go, but genius without courage almost certainly won't. And so we're looking for some kind of magic combination of genius and courage. There's one of my partners quotes Nietzsche a lot on these topics. He says it's will to power. It's people who simply will not stop. And by the way, there's always been this kind of thing in Silicon Valley of sort of this, I call it the failure fetish, right? Failure is good, right? Failure, you guys are probably all have been taught this, heard about this from a lot of people. Failure is a wonderful thing. Failure teaches you all this stuff, and it's great to fail a lot. And we don't buy any of that. We think that's all complete nonsense. We think failure sucks. We think failure is a terribly, terribly depressing thing to go through. We think success, on the other hand, is wonderful. You wouldn't think that this is something you have to actually say out loud, but we do find it to be clarifying when we point it out. And so we are strongly biased towards people who are so determined to succeed that they never give up, they never quit.
Great. So let's call a spade. A lot of people become entrepreneurs specifically as a way to try to become extremely wealthy. So they see themselves starting the next Facebook or Google. However, the odds of being that successful are actually incredibly small. So only a handful, an entire generation of companies actually end up getting to that scale. So here's a funnel from CB Insights, actually. It shows how many seed-funded tech companies get through each round of funding. So even if we reduce our ambitions a bit to becoming a unicorn, so a company with $1 billion valuation, you still have incredibly long odds. So only 1% of seed-funded companies get all the way through this funnel. Now, getting to 6 rounds of funding, it's not exactly the same as becoming a unicorn, but it's pretty well correlated. Most of the unicorns I know had to have at least that many rounds of funding. So to get there, you have to have a truly great idea. It's got to be unique, defensible, going after a large market. You have to execute extremely well. So that means you have to work hard, you have to attract the right people, and you have to have a better strategy than your competitors. And you also just have to be really, really lucky, because there's a lot of things that can get in your way, and a lot of them aren't even in your control.
You can't guess, you can't think, there's a knowing. You have to know that even if it doesn't work today, tomorrow, this artist that I played that weren't popular at the time, that I play more than I play current artists. Shuggie Otis, I suggest you just go look up Shuggie Otis. It was amazing. At the time, you gotta know Shuggie Otis? And at the time, it wasn't this hugely popular thing, but I think when it all is said and done, we would play that music more than any other music, right? So you have to have this knowing that, okay, it may not work today, it may not work tomorrow, but this is the right thing, and this is what I'm doing, and this is what's feeding me. So that would be the best advice that I can give you. That knowing, just believe in what you're doing, and if you don't believe in it, then you're not doing it. You haven't figured out the thing that you do best yet. When you feel it and when you know, no one can tell you. You only have to be right once.
You be fearless every day, and when you don't feel like it, just pretend, girl. That's it. Really and truly, don't let them see you sweat. You know, it was real weird getting congratulations texts from people for money. You know, I was just like, wait, how does... I never got congratulated for money before. Like, that shit is crazy. But it made sense when I realized that it was inspiring to people, that they felt like this is something that they could achieve. Yes. Knowing where I've come from, knowing my humble beginnings, they see the possibility, and it gives them hope. Yes. And that made me feel really happy.
Yes, and for those who want to be a part of the Billionaire Club, we want to know some tips. I saw that you ate caviar for breakfast. So what other tips do you have if we join the club?
You have to work really hard. A lot of sleepless nights. Do not quit. But also try to take breaks. And I gotta give myself that advice. You gotta take breaks just to check in with yourself.
Realize that you're going to run across a lot of rejection. I say this time in and time out. Be prepared for the rejection, no matter how bad it is. Don't let it overcome you or influence you. Keep on going towards what you want to do, no matter what. No matter whether your bills are paid, not paid, someone says no 1,000 times. Again, go back to be as enthusiastic on door number 100 as you were on door number 1. But believe in yourself. And it's really all about knowing you have a great service or a great product.
When you grow up, you tend to get told that the world is the way it is, and your life is just to live your life inside the world, try not to bash into the walls too much, try to have a nice family life, have fun, save a little money. But life, that's a very limited life. Life can be much broader once you discover one simple fact, and that is everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than you. And you can change it. You can influence it. You can build your own things that other people can use. And the minute that you understand that you can poke life and actually something will, if you push in, something will pop out the other side, that you can change it, you can mold it. That's maybe the most important thing, is to shake off this erroneous notion that life is there and you're just going to live in it, versus embrace it, change it, improve it, make your mark upon it. I think that's very important.
The methods I use to craft goals. So I stated that each of my decade has goals and focus that I wanted to put my efforts, energy, and time against it. So my 20s was those of learning, 30s was focused on making the startup really successful, 40s was try to incorporate having family and children into my life if possible, and then 50s. I just turned 60 2 months ago. When I was at Procter & Gamble, one of the really valuable learning I had is that setting goals. In setting goals, you need to make it SMART. So specific, measurable, actionable, relatable, time-bound. So SMART goals.
That when you realize that you have something to give, that you give it, that you don't hold back, and that you, even if you're afraid to do it, don't hold back, because you've been given opportunities and gifts and talents for a reason, and it's to share them and help other people understand that they may have that gift or a different gift that's just as worthy to be shared, and that way we create a better world for everyone. So that's why I'm here, not because I'm a great speaker and not because I have a lot of credibility. It's because I'm humble enough to know that what I have to offer has been given to me. We all have the opportunity to build bridges. We all have the opportunity to be examples. We all have the opportunity to be leaders. We all have the opportunity to do something good. Never, ever turn away from that opportunity.
Fortunately, I thought differently. And because I thought differently, and I had the strong conviction, I continued to build out the side project of Palo Alto Delivery into the fast-growing technology company that it is today. So that's my third lesson. To summarize the 3 lessons I shared with you today: 1, do things that don't scale. That allows you to move really quickly, and you should use that as an opportunity to learn as much as you can. 2nd, don't be attached to your plans. Startups are inherently chaotic and unpredictable, so you're never going to be able to predict everything that's coming your way. And 3rd, trust your gut. You're going to hear advice and opinions from a lot of different people, many of whom you might respect. But at the end of the day, it's up to you to make that final call.
Super, simple, ugly. Like, honestly, we weren't really expecting anything. We just launched it. And all we wanted to see was, would we get phone calls from this? And if we got enough phone calls, then maybe this delivery idea was something worth pursuing. So we put it up there. We weren't really expecting anything, and we're driving back home, and all of a sudden we got a phone call. Someone called. They wanted to order Thai food, and we're like, oh wow, like, this is a real order. We have to do something about it, right? So, so we're in our cars, and we're like, okay, like we're not doing anything right now. Might as well let's just swing by, Siam Royale, pick up some pad thai, and let's deliver it to this person, and let's try to learn how this whole delivery thing works. And we did. We delivered to this guy up in Alpine Road, and that was like our first ever delivery, right? It was like the best first delivery / worst delivery you could have asked for. We couldn't make this stuff up, and then the next day we got 2 more phone calls. The day after that we got 5, and then it became 7, and then it became 10, and then soon we started gaining traction on campus with PaloAltoDelivery.com, which was pretty crazy, because think about it, right? This was a landing page. You had to look up PDF menus to place your order, and then you had to call in. This isn't exactly the most professional looking site, yet people were we kept getting phone calls, we kept getting orders. And that's kind of when we knew we were onto something. When people are willing, we knew we found a need people wanted when people are willing to put up with all this. So I think another key point to remember is that we launched this in about an hour, right? Like, we didn't spend, we didn't have any drivers, we didn't have any algorithms, we didn't spend, we didn't have a back end, we didn't spend 6 months building like a fancy dispatch system, and we didn't have any of that. We just launched, because at the beginning, none of that is necessary, right? At the beginning, it's all about testing your idea, trying to get this thing off the ground, and figuring out whether this was something people even wanted. And it's okay to hack things together at the beginning. At YC, there's a mantra we like to talk about is doing things that don't scale. So at the beginning, we were the delivery drivers.
The fundamental aspect of it is you have to have that strategic vision, that level of innovation, that blank slate approach, and just pure drive, hours, everything that you need to put into it, like no tomorrow, to be able to successfully deliver and execute. And I think that's the reason why we exist, and that's the reason why some of the greatest technology companies of our generation exist as well. When you have to build something truly from the ground up, everything is a challenge. You know, it's and not a trivial one. You have to be able to ensure that you're successfully balancing all the different aspects of the business beyond the core technology developments. And to be able to successfully execute on that is something where you're still having to build the plane as it's taking off, you know, and because you have to really have that vision around where you can be. And of course, you know that if you don't get the technology to work, if you can't solve that risk and that problem, then you're done. It doesn't work. But at the end of the day, it's some motivational driver as well to make sure that you put in everything you got into making sure that it all happens and executes successfully.
But the Apollo landing changed my life. This is something that it was extraordinary, obviously, for us. We did not have TV at the time, but we had a radio. So I just remember being glued to the radio, listening to this really amazing American accomplishment. I mean, just to me, this was like in a different dimension someplace, and it was very, very fascinating. But what was really fascinating about that was, in that moment, even just listening to the radio, I felt connected to what was happening. And I just felt so proud. And even though I had nothing to do with what was happening, it felt like I was doing something. I'm like, why am I so proud?
You felt a real connection.
Yeah, the connection was just really incredible. So I think the moon landing was just a proof that anything was possible. And it inspired me so much that I think that's when I started dreaming about coming to America, and that's how it started.
Wow.
Of waking up saying, how do we do it better?
Well, two things. The vision of making this a better tool so that in every home and on every desktop, people really want to use the thing. And then thinking, where are we going wrong? Where should we be moving faster? Those are the two thoughts that really drive us forward. And when we hire new people, we look for people who care about those same things. Usually, if I'm that focused and they're that key of a priority, I can get a lot of energy and a lot of intelligence inside the company and get it done. And yet, there's enough of a risk there that it really keeps me working hard. I think there's some invention that we have to do, and getting those products out to market it's going to require hard work.
The first rule in investment is don't lose. And the second rule in investment is don't forget the first rule, and that's all the rules there are. I mean, if you buy things for far below what they're worth, and you buy a group of them, you basically don't lose money. It's a temperamental quality, not an intellectual quality. You don't need tons of IQ in this business. I mean, you have to have enough IQ to get from here to downtown Omaha, but you do not have to be able to play three-dimensional chess or be in the top leagues in terms of bridge playing or something of the sort. You need a stable personality. You need a temperament that neither derives great pleasure from being with the crowd or against the crowd. Because this is not a business where you take polls, it's a business where you think. And Ben Graham would say that you're not right or wrong because 1,000 people agree with you. And you're not right or wrong because 1,000 people disagree with you. You're right because your facts and your reasoning are right.
Warren, your approach seems so simple. Why doesn't everybody do it?
Well, I think partly because it is so simple. That the academics, for example, focus on all kinds of variables. Partly because
by academics you mean professors of
right,
finance?
The data is there.
In business school?
Sure, and the data's there. So they focus on whether if you buy stocks on Tuesday and sell them on Friday, you're better off, or if you buy them in election years and sell them in other years, you're better off, or if you buy small companies. There are all these variables because the data are there, and they've learned how to manipulate data. And as a friend of mine says, to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And once you have these skills, you just are are dying to utilize them in some way, but they aren't important. If I were being asked to participate in a business opportunity, would it make any difference to me whether I bought it on a Tuesday or a Saturday or an election year or something? It's not what a businessman thinks about in buying businesses. So why think about it when buying stocks? Because stocks are just pieces of businesses.
Well, I don't consider myself I think my way of thinking will work for anybody, of trying to be very rational and disciplined. So I think that much. But to flit around to various careers and go into the other fellow's professional territory and try and outdo him and do all kinds of things like that, I think will not work for most people. And so I always I'm always being visited by young men who say, I'm practicing law and I don't like it. I'd rather be a billionaire. How can I do it? And I tell them, well, I'll tell you a story. A young man goes to see Mozart. And he says, Mozart, I want to start composing symphonies. And Mozart said, how old are you? And the guy says, 22. And he says, you're too young to do symphonies. And the guy says, yes, but you were 10 years old when you were composing symphonies. And Mozart says, yes, but I wasn't running around asking other people how to do it.
That I benefit a lot from being in the right place and being in the right time. You know, I look at my mother's generation. Nobody had any opportunities, right, and in China. And now you talk to students graduating from school, and if they were, they have a job, and then very soon they begin to think, maybe I can start some business doing this, doing that. And that's where I think there's such a drive of entrepreneurship. Some of it is innate. I was probably born as a passionate, persistent person. And some of it is because I just really love what I do. I build buildings, right? I still, to this day, I've been doing this for 16 years. Every time I go on the construction site, which I go all the time, I just get so excited of seeing a building coming up and sitting down with the designers and dreaming about, imagining how it would be like in a few years in time. Still, I get so passionate about doing this. And I think that's just creativity. People need creativity, needs to create.
Over those 7 years, I've kind of learnt a lot through successes and through failures. And today I wanted to share with you 3 concepts that I think have led to us becoming a successful company. First of those is customer experience. The second is team building. And the final one that I'll talk about is growth.
Basically thought about my life and I was like, all right, you have one chance at life. You don't get multiple chances, like religion, reincarnation aside. So the question is, how do you have the massive impact with your life? And for me, I'd always measure that on 2 axes. So your x-axis is how many people's lives do you touch? And your y-axis, how deeply do you bring impact to those people in a positive way every single day? So number of people times depth of impact. And for me, like, the x-axis was always obvious. Never before in human history could I do this on a magic metal box and build something that every person on the planet used. But now you have software, now you have internet, and it's crazy because if you think about the forces that shaped our world 20 years ago, what was it? Government, countries, religion. What is it today? Facebook, Apple, Google, Amazon, Microsoft. So from a young age, I actually told my mom when I was like 8 or 9, I was like, I want to build software for every person on the planet. And so that's kind of what I had started doing.
But you've got to measure your productivity and you've got to be productive. So the 4 Ps, got to change that. Perceptive, persuasive, persistent, and productive. Those are the 4 Ps that I think would help any entrepreneur if they totally understand and apply that in what their endeavors are. That helps you bring, if you will, clarity to whatever your purpose might be. And spend more time on purpose than on whether it's going to just make you $1. Make sure you have purpose. Make sure you get it. There's a reason. The whys of what you do are so much more important than the how-tos. It is so much more important that you know why. It's so much more important that you are perceptive enough to know what the consumer wants. So start with why, then get to what as fast as you can, and you'll figure out the how-tos.
And we did it by building a product that used technology that didn't really exist. People kept telling me that I was crazy to do it, and maybe they were right. But if I had listened to them, I wouldn't be standing here with you today. And the advice I can give to all of you is if you have a dream, you just got to go for it. Now, there's a point at which you have to say, enough, it's not working, let's go on to the next thing. But I'd stretch it out before I got to that point, because a lot of times, just before you turn that last corner is the time that you really get depressed. And just think of what would happen if you hadn't gone around that corner. Many of you will tell me that, will tell you that you're crazy. You have to be a little crazy to invest the amount of time and energy that it takes to start a new business. You have to put in long hours and give weekends up, no more time with the family. You have to take financial risks. But building something from the ground up really is one of the most rewarding things that you can ever do. And every day it's an opportunity to experiment, and every day it's an opportunity to try new things.
As well as conversations and readings that have come to me during my life. I hope to contribute to your way of thinking and living, your social commitment, emotional strength, your sense of responsibility, maturity, and above all, your real happiness. Real happiness that is a product of who you are and how you conduct yourself on a daily basis. Success is not being recognized by others. It is not about an external opinion. It is about an internal state of being. It is the harmony between the soul and our emotions that are fed by love, family, friendship, authenticity, and honesty.
Yeah, I think to be honest, when you reach success, there's always multiple reasons. You got to do like almost 99 things right, and to fail, you only have to do one thing wrong. But I think it's very fundamental. You have products, you have service, and you have trust. And I think those are the three key pillars for Binance. It's a huge risk not to try it. This is a new technology. This is the future. If you don't try it, you risk getting left behind in the old world. So not trying it is a huge risk as well.
Just see connections of things that I think are sensible. And one of the differences when I see something like that and I figure it out, I'll do it. Part of what I've discovered in life is most people don't like changing what they do. They're quite happy the way they are. And even if they grumble, that isn't enough to make them change course. And so when I see things that are different than other people see them, they're always based, they're fact-based, they're not my opinions. And I can explain, what will happen and why. And hardly anybody cares. In fact, they say typically, that's interesting, and then they go back to what they're doing. I don't understand why it doesn't change their behavior, but it certainly changes mine. And because I'm now in a position, at my own business, Blackstone, and in other things that I do, where when I see something that I think is worthy of a real course correction, which involves starting new things, doing new things, I go and do it. I don't hesitate because they're all logical and I can explain why they would work. I don't find anyone who says, I don't think it'll work. They just don't want to do it. And the way I think is whenever I see one of those opportunities, that's the least risky thing in the world. First, you have no competition. That's one of the things that makes it very easy to go there, and you know why you're going. It's no different than playing basketball and everybody's guarding everybody, and all of a sudden somebody guarding you falls down and you're 10 feet away from the basket. It's a completely open shot. You take it. You don't think about it.
Well, I think a lot of it's luck. I probably have a good personality for running a group of people, but there are other people who maybe even have a better personality for doing that. We underestimate the role of luck. It's typical that if someone fails at something, he'll say, I had bad luck. And if he makes a success, he'll say, I was a smart guy. And, oh, I was just lucky. People don't usually say that if they make a big success. And of course, obviously, not everyone can make a big success. But I think that luck played a role. I was in the right place at the right time. But I think what I'm good at is getting good people to work together.
Be a problem solver. First and foremost, be a problem solver. Firms that solve problems are firms that are successful. We're successful because we meet the needs of our capital partners. They have important missions, whether it's research institutions searching for cures to cancer, or research institutions trying to understand the origins of the universe. Us managing their capital helps to fuel their mission. We solve a problem for them. In our market making business, we solve problems for institutional and retail investors around the world by being able to provide more liquidity at a lower price than, bluntly, any other firm in the world. In the pandemic, we solved the problem of how to protect our employees and yet have resiliency in the conditions of a pandemic. The Four Seasons in Palm Beach. First and foremost, learn to be a problem solver. Software engineering, mathematics, really important. It's also really important to learn how to be a good communicator. Going back to education, my 9th grade English teacher, at the end of one of the school days, early in my 9th grade, took me aside and she said, I've heard from some of the other teachers you're really gifted at mathematics. But if you want to go somewhere in life, you need to learn how to write. No, she taught me how to write. And she said, you will tutor my daughter in math, and I will tutor you in how to write. And it changed my life, because having the ability to communicate is so important in so much of what I do day in and day out. Life is full of disappointments, of speed bumps, of challenges. I've had my fair share. I think the important thing is to get back up on your feet. I think resiliency is really important. We spoke about 2008 for a brief moment. One of my competitors put his list out of the 5 firms most likely to go bankrupt. I was on that list of 5. Now, 15 years later, it's in the dustbins of history. We're one of the most successful hedge funds of all time, one of the most successful securities dealers in the world. But it took a lot of resiliency to get back on our feet after that moment in time when the whole world thought we were basically finished.
I don't think I give a shit about my legacy. That's not what matters. I think what matters is what impact I have on the world in the end, and really more than what impact everyone has on the world. It doesn't matter if I make the world better or if someone else does it. Better is better, and if I can do anything to help other people help the world, that's just as good. So it's sort of part of me would love my legacy to be generically positive, but I just don't think that's what matters. In the end, it's the mark that we actually leave on the world, not the mark we're perceived to leave on the world, that matters.
He shows up, he wanders around, he meets a faculty member who turns out to be a brilliant geneticist, and working with him becomes a brilliant geneticist himself, one of the most famous in the country. But he had to move to Boston because that's where the target was. And then he was willing to accept the risk. So sometimes life works that way, right? That you move there, but he made the luck happen. And in fact, when I say this, remember that almost everything that happens to you happens because of the people that you're with, right? Every single success that I've had has been because I was surrounded by these incredibly interesting and successful people. This a technical person is a PhD, in my career and so forth and so on. But force yourself to take advantage of all of this. Don't just sit at home. Live your life to the fullest. The most successful people work hard and play hard, which means you should not watch television. You should watch YouTube, right? It's very clear. This sort of change we can believe in is in fact you, right? Your ability to adapt to this environment around. I would also suggest that you develop at least a fake charm if you don't have any. Sorry. Take a picture of someone's child and send it to the parent. Explain to someone's parent how valuable their employee is. By the way, it works every time, right? Trust me. Don't say nice hairdo, which is what I would say. Say, love your new hair and the combination with that jewelry is sublime, right? That's fake charm. It works very well. When you're asked what your favorite number is, always say 17. It shows you understand prime numbers. Right? I mean, you need a leg up. You went to Stanford. The best prefix in a sentence is the word imagine. If I say imagine to you, right, that means I'm talking to you. I'm getting you to think. I'm getting you to be curious, that you're hopeful. Seek meaning versus novelty. It's fun to have novelty, but meaning is really how you get your life, how you make your life happen, right? As you create accomplishments, it's the meaning and the impact that you have and the people that you've worked with which will provide this incredible satisfaction. One of my sort of pet peeve with strategy is that it's always taught in a short time frame. But in fact, the best strategies have longer time frame horizons. There's these traditional sayings, which I like, which are we tend to overestimate what can be done in 18 months and underestimate what can be done in 10 years. Watch a movie from 10 years ago or an interview in the technology space from 10 years ago and see how much has changed, starting with your mobile phone, to make the point.
I think for everybody, in order to be successful, there are 5 steps that you go through, essentially. That everybody has their goals. What is their goal and the passion? So you have goals. And then what happens is you're going after your goals and you encounter your problems. Okay, so encountering problems. And then the big difference between people is how they approach those problems. People who get bummed out by the problems don't learn from them. Who learns from them? So those who recognize that problems are exciting, that they get into those problems or mistakes. Mistakes are learning experience. The pain that comes from that mistake. Every time you have pain, it's an indication that something's at odds. And so the people who have the pain are the people then who will go into that, realize that if they solve that pain, solve that problem, understand what that is representative of, not just the one problem, but that problem is a certain type of problem that will happen over and over and over again in your life. And if you can solve, how do I deal with that kind of problem? So diagnose. The third thing that everybody needs to do is if they have problems on the way to their goals, that they diagnose those problems and they get to the root cause, the real root cause. The real root cause is typically what people are like. Can you go to what you're like? Can you go to your mistakes? Can you go to your weaknesses? Right? Can you go to other people's mistakes and weaknesses? Some people, because of an ego barrier, can't do that. And so if they don't recognize their own mistakes, their own weaknesses, or others' mistakes and weaknesses, what the root cause being what they're like because of ego barriers, if they can't go there, they're going to repeat those mistakes. They're going to have them over and over again. So it's the process essentially of saying at that stage, what am I like? Everybody has strengths and everybody has weaknesses. The weaknesses are the other side of the strengths. So let's say if you're a right-brained, creative person, you may not be reliable because just the way you think necessitates you to think a certain way. That means you can't think in another way. That means you're going to keep bumping into that thing that's standing in your way. But unless you can embrace, I'm not reliable, right, and deal with it, you won't get around it. It's still going to continue to be a barrier, right? So the diagnosis to the root cause is important. So then, if you diagnose it, then you have to design what are you going to do about it that works. So let's say you are very creative but not reliable. Okay, you have to find a means of, first of all, embracing that, and then saying, If I'm not reliable, what do? Do I work with a reliable person? Do I learn reliability? Do I have some compensating mechanism? Because I can't let that lack of reliability stand in the way of my goal. As long as I keep doing that, I'm going to keep running into problems. So you have to design what you do about the problems. And then when you're designing what you do about the problems, then you have to follow it through. So you have to follow through or do the thing you designed. And the doing the thing you designed requires self-discipline and so on. So people have to do those things in order to be successful.
It was just about the action, activity, and the building part. You know, I just like to build things, and I think that most entrepreneurs, at their core, I think just they like to build. You know, I don't know very many entrepreneurs, or frankly even wildly successful people, or very successful people, or people who've had success in any field that do it because, you know, oh, if I do this, I'm gonna make a lot of money, and they're chasing money. Generally, you know, money follows them. Generally doesn't lead, and you see them do well in that category, but they're motivated by I think, building things.
So how do you sustain that? I mean, how do you sustain that drive?
Keep building bigger things, I guess. I mean, I think that, you know, anybody who has that bug, who really just, you know, again, loves to create, loves to build, I think that that stays with you, and I don't think it goes away. You know, most people, and you heard a couple speakers earlier here today, they've done different things, but at their core, I think, you know, it's a building thing, it's a creating thing, it's impacting people positively, the community, or wherever they may be in the process.
Well, first, there are two kinds of people when you make mistake. One kind of people don't want to admit that you have made a mistake, and those people try to make all kinds of excuse and justify what you have made the decision in the wrong way. And the other group is accept and admit the mistake. And I'm the kind of guy, I would rather, accept my stupidity and my ignorance, my, bad decisions, so that I can learn from my mistake. I don't need to justify my mistake. I accept it. Sorry, I was stupid, right? So that I can learn quickly, and I try not to make the same mistake. I don't want to remember again and again, right. But it's better to accept it so that I can become smarter.
Being a CEO is problem solving. Being a salesperson is problem solving. Being an investor is problem solving. Most of life is really about smart problem solving, and I found that my engineering skills in problem solving and my education in first principle knowledge has really helped in almost everything that I do, including being a CEO. And if you think about what a CEO does, in the final analysis, you're trying to lead a company, a group of people, in an endeavor that is meaningful, to make a contribution to society in a way that other companies have not. And at its core, it's a problem-solving exercise.
So in change and challenge and adversity, and in particular failure, that great teacher, that great enhancer of your wisdom and strength of your character, be unrelenting, be unreasonable in every endeavour and challenge that you set yourself. As I've been taught by the elders of my childhood, imagine what you wish to create and the world in which you wish to live, and hold that thought dear in your mind until the steps to achieve that goal unfold in your imagination. Most of all, don't let anyone bet you against your own success. Take time to celebrate. Keep your branding high as hot as you can. And perhaps leave the rabbits in peace.
In life,
Do what's right. Really, do what's right. And it won't hurt you. Just keep your priorities straight. Right now, like I did, I think of right now, you all have negative balance sheets. But you have so much upside. You all have great opportunities ahead. Don't let anyone tell you different.
It's an absolutely great career choice. You will learn more faster in a startup than you will at any large company, right? Because you have to do so many things and you have to do them incredibly fast. Your speed of learning and pace of learning, even if you choose to go, you see people do a startup for 2 years, join one, it doesn't work out or it gets bored or something, they go back to a bigger company, then they go back to a startup. Like, this is going to happen more and more, but the speed of learning for the individual, the ability to try different careers, paths, jobs, functions is vastly greater in a startup.
So my first piece of advice is about being different, about being your own person. When a young, promising tennis player was asked if she was the next Anna Kournikova, she replied, "I'm not the next anyone. I'm the first Maria Sharapova." So if you really want to be successful in life, if you really want to make a difference and stand out, you need to be contrary. My second piece of advice is to back yourself. I love this quote from Thomas Edison. "If we all did the things we were capable of doing, we would literally astound ourselves." You need to believe in yourself. My third piece of advice is to develop a love of learning. It was Eleanor Roosevelt who said, "I think at a child's birth, if a mother could ask a fairy godmother to endow it with the most useful gift, that gift should be curiosity."
I think the most important one, number one, David, if you are going into any business, you must understand the business A to Z. You must know that business. You shouldn't just go and invest because somebody now will say, okay, hey, you know, there's good money in cement, then you go and jump into cement. You have to understand the business in and out. And that's the difference with me. I know my business in and out. You can wake me up any time and ask me about fertilizer, ask me about anything that we are doing. And the other one is really to work very hard, and you have to have the tenacity of continuing to, you have some hiccups here and there, but you have to be focused in terms of what you are doing.
I think when you're selecting what you're going to do next, your top priority ought to be learning and growing. Not making a lot of money, learning and growing. And I strongly encourage you to build a strong foundation of experiences. And I'm not saying that all founders can always scale with their businesses. The really smart founders, if they know they can't, will get a COO or even bring in a CEO for a while and then sometimes go back and run their companies. But that commitment to have outstanding management is what's going to allow us to execute, because execution at speed is everything. Thomas Edison said, "Innovation without execution is a hallucination." So your ability to execute matters enormously.
And that's what you did, right?
Well, we've always been very honest in every respect that we know how. Made a lot of mistakes, but never one of being dishonest. Hard work certainly is important. And I found the harder you work, the luckier you get.
We pull up the 20 house and search results, and we realize something, that the photography, the images of their listings are actually not very good. So we kind of have this realization, we can solve that problem. We know how to take a good photo, but it's not scalable. That's the thing, is that up until this point, we had tried to solve problems in a scalable way, which I think I would call like some of the mythology of Silicon Valley, is that you have to solve problems in a scalable way. That one line of code has to meet the needs of hundreds, tens of thousands, or hundreds of thousands, or maybe millions of people. So Paul Graham comes along and basically gives us this message, which was the single greatest piece of advice we ever got. Go meet your people. Do things that don't scale. It'll teach you. You'll learn from it.
You want to use the right technology at the right time. If you're too early, basically you're spending a lot of effort trying to make it work, and it's just nobody gets famous for that. And if you're too late, you're not competitive, or you create extra costs and so on. So being sort of, for example, HoneyGeek was available as a commercial product 2 or 3 years ago, except it was $100,000 support, and nobody could afford that, right? Like, it's not interesting. Now it's hundreds of dollars support, and it's very interesting. So the inflection point is when things become volume kind of things, and then they're deployable by the cloud. You don't want to be in the early learning curve where you pay a very high premium for things, and you don't want to be too late either, because otherwise you're not taking advantage of what the technology.
If you're not doing something that you love to do, find something that you love to do, because it will make your whole life different. Many people, as I did at the beginning, got stuck with a job that I really didn't like. I would never have stayed with that job, or if I had to financially, I would have stayed with that job and been an unhappy, mediocre lawyer in a world where I could never have had the confidence of doing a great job. So for you, for your children, boys and girls, find something that you're naturally good at, figure out how to make a living at it, nurture those of you who run businesses, who have women in their businesses. You have to realize that they're doing a whole lot of stuff. That doesn't mean you have to cut them a whole bunch of slack. It means you're supposed to demand excellence. That's what got you to run your own business. But make sure you're doing something that you love to do. And if you can't do it as a vocation, for whatever reason, do it as an avocation. Something that gives you pure satisfaction is something that gives you confidence. If you can't do it every day from 9 to 5, learn the tango. Do something spectacular for your soul.
And the reason I think these are important, they hold regardless. If you are looking to reach pinnacles, that's what this is about. I was burning with desire to reach pinnacles. It's exactly the same whether you're a businessman, a sportsman, an academic pursuit, it's the same. So for me, I think about it as my 4 legs, the 4 legs of my stool. It's very simple. Leg 1, passion. You have to get up every day and love what you're doing. And if you do not, make a change, because you will never reach a pinnacle if you don't have a burning passion. Focus. You must have goals. You must have timelines. The goals have to be quantified, and you must hold yourself accountable. You better have determination, and a lot of it. I'm a very determined individual, but what I've learned is, hey, this is hard. This is really hard. Over 40 or 50 years, you have some tough times. That's when you need to dig deep. It's easy when the wind's behind your back. It gets a whole lot harder when it's in your face. Be intense, be obsessive, and never waver. Last leg, self-awareness, critically important. Know yourself well. Understand your strengths and play to them. Understand your weaknesses. Work with them, work around them, don't obsess about them.
Yeah, I would say that your path in life is never a straight line. You have ups and you have downs. But in retrospect, when you look back at all the setbacks that, whether it's me personally or others have experienced, at least for myself, I found that those setbacks were always the learning opportunities that eventually helped me later on with Airbnb and making that successful. Mm-hmm. So for example, prior to Airbnb, I was a lead engineer at a company that didn't do so well. Mm-hmm. But I like to say I learned everything not to do at that company, which actually was incredibly valuable. Now at the time it was disappointing, but actually all those learnings got effectively put into Airbnb, and we're stronger for it. Yeah. And so, all these setbacks I think are really just short-term setbacks. As long as you're always learning, then I think that's progress forward, and something to keep in mind.
To always employ graduates because they have no fear, they have no experience. I don't want experience. I want people who haven't done something before and want to find a new and better way of doing it, and who have no fear of failure, because failure is so important. I mean, it's what you learn from it. If you always succeed and always give the right answer, you're learning nothing.
Right.
So I want people who feel as though they're pioneering and want to do something in a different and better way.
He reached the pinnacle of being a citizen of this great country. And she constantly said to me, Bernola, you can be whatever you want to be. If you want to be president of the United States, you could do it here. And she spoke Yiddish to me, because we spoke Yiddish in the house. And she said, there's nothing to stop you except you. You'll be the one to stop yourself. If you work hard, if you're diligent, if you're better than other people, if you use your head And she said, sechel. If you use a sechel, which is common sense, you could beat anybody at anything.
I mean, I think to be successful in anything, you have to have a passion for what you're doing. And, you know, and if you have that passion, I mean, it was great. And I looked at affordable housing from the standpoint, you're doing well and you're doing good at the same time, and using that as a basis. And today, you know, affordable housing is still probably the greatest need that we have in America, and will continue to be one of the great things. But I think, you know, to be successful, I mean, you know, as you know, building your company, it was a question of you have an idea and you expand upon it, and then you connect the dots as you grow, and you never stop working.
I give lots of talks and lectures, especially more recently on entrepreneurship, because everybody is always curious, you know, what's the magic formula for the success of Broadcom? And I wish it was that simple, that I could just write down a formula and give it to somebody and create the next Broadcom. As we all know, it's not easy. And it's not just about being smart. All entrepreneurs are really smart. All entrepreneurs have, not all, most have really good technology, and virtually all startups have great, hardworking, dedicated employees. But that doesn't mean they're going to be successful. That's kind of the minimum entry point to become a startup, but that certainly doesn't guarantee success. There's a lot more to it, and unfortunately, a lot of it is out of our control. And it falls into the categories of luck and timing. Timing is really everything, being at the right place at the right time, because you really have to leverage a major market disruption to be a successful startup, because you're going against big, large, successful existing companies. And if you're just going to do the same thing that they're going to do, you're guaranteed to lose. So you have to do something different.
Nobody remembers your failures, even though the probability of success was low on either. This is great about entrepreneurship. Failure doesn't matter. But one's willingness to fail gives one the ability to succeed. If you're not willing to take risks, if you're not willing to fail, you're not going to do anything interesting, because most interesting things are new, and new things involve risk, and risk involves failure.
Bring it every day. Get up, you know, I'm telling you, there are some days I go home and I am just beat. Oh my God, how much more can I do this? A good night's sleep, I get up in the morning, and you bring it again. Fearlessly. Just go, go, go.
Once you've dug a hole deep enough, get out and start a new hole. You know, big deep holes are very expensive. And but so many people are tempted that I have put so much money into this project, I've got to see it to completion. And they don't realize that even when it's completed, no one may be interested in it.
I think you're always finding the way is the hardest part. At every stage of life, every trial, every success, you know, you're going into some kind of fog. There isn't a plan that suddenly reveals itself and you go, ta-da, oh, now I understand. I think I'm, the way I self-describe it, I have terminal curiosity. And so I always think that the future will be better and different than the past. And I think as I look back and take inventory of myself, I'm very open-minded and flexible. So people say the older you get set in your ways. I don't think so. You have to keep being curious. The notion that the present is different than the past and the future will be different than the present, and the present is past as we say it. So, you know, I think I'm always, by nature, I'm an optimist. Well, you have to have good ideas, but you realize, I said, you have to work. And if your work's fun, then it isn't like work. It isn't like, boy, I'm tired, I've got to go home. It's like, I've got to go home because I can't spend, you know, I've got other responsibilities. But I think that leadership, which is a subject in itself, so I think leaders lead themselves, but leaders have ideas, and maybe they're visionary ideas, you know, we probably today people would say, well, Steve Jobs was a visionary because he invented this little gadget, the cell phone. But he didn't invent cell phones, and he didn't design the cell phone. He just took a couple of ideas and put them together. And no one else put those same ideas together as successfully as he did. But he had something that he was trying to do that intrigued him, and he could do it very well.
I'm a great believer that nobody succeeds unless they really want to buy the ticket. I mean, in the book I tell the story about the Jewish man who was in the white goods business, and everything was fine. He was very religious, and he went to synagogue every Saturday, and then one day he went to the synagogue, and after prayers he got down on one knee and said, God, business is not as good as it used to be. I'm really in trouble, and I need to win the lottery. And the next morning he woke up and opened up the paper, and he didn't win. And so the following Saturday he went back to the synagogue, and meanwhile business had gotten significantly worse. And so he finished his prayers, and then he got down on one knee and he said, God, things have really gotten much worse, and I'm really in trouble, and I need to win the lottery. And the next morning he opened up the newspaper, and he didn't win. So on the following Saturday, he's literally spent Friday preparing his Chapter 11 papers, and he tells God of this, and he says, God, I need to win the lottery. And from up on high came a voice, and the voice said, Moshe, you gotta buy a ticket. So, more than anything else, if I were asked to give you all advice, my advice would be buy a ticket. Nobody wins if they don't play. And so you've got to buy a ticket. You've got to be committed, whatever that commitment may represent. I don't have any preferences one way or the other than I've made the fortune that I've made and built the empire that I've made because I've been a professional opportunist. And my advice to everybody is become a professional opportunist. Recognize what the opportunities are and how they may be solved. Recognize the fact that you're not always right. As a matter of fact, you can't succeed unless you understand rejection. So understand it, take your risk, and make it happen, and buy a ticket.
Everybody has something that they're better at than everybody else, or they're better at.
I agree with you.
Okay.
So how do we figure that out?
I think that you have to sit there and look at yourself in the mirror sometime and say, what am I good at? You might be a great poet. You might be a great author. You might be a great athlete, or you might have a great voice, or you might be great at taking an engine apart and putting it back together. You might be the greatest painter that doesn't even need tape that can paint this line in this room. But we all have a talent. We really do.
And actually by recovering the integrity and doing what needs to get done to clean up my mess, I actually show up as a person with more integrity. I think some people love the game of making money. And I think that then they look for a business that will make the money, and that's exciting. So I think that's one type of person. I mean, I definitely fall into the other type of person where I would have done what I did 18 hours a day for 100 years. And if as long as I could feed my family and get to work and keep clean.
For you, as we talked a moment ago, it was the nourishment of having your idea validated.
Exactly.
So my advice is the most important thing in the world to change is yourself. View yourself as a canvas for change. Because you leave here with one set of skills and a lot of learning and a lot of that, but no one's got a full deck coming out of here. Even if, and I was running a very successful company at that point, I had a lot I needed to change and grow. And because I didn't have a coach, I didn't improve. So get a coach. Find somebody who'll tell you the truth about your performance and then kind of beat on you to change. Get a coach. All great athletes have a coach, no matter how talented they are. Whether it's Tiger Woods or the best quarterbacks, they got a coach. And if they need a coach, what about us regular people? So that'd be my one piece of feedback. The most important thing to change is yourself and get a coach.
I've been an entrepreneur for more than 45 years now.
I've probably done 35 companies during this period of time. So I speak with experience when I say that there's absolutely nothing in life more exciting than being an entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur is all about creation. You have a completely open canvas on which you can create the kind of company that fits your dreams, that can help society, that can help other people. It is just an absolutely phenomenal opportunity for all young people to go into. Now, to be an entrepreneur, it's not as if you need some degrees or some 30 years of previous work experience. You can be an entrepreneur if you have a good idea for a new product or a new service. You can be an entrepreneur if you are willing to work hard and face obstacles and run through those obstacles to achieve success. You can be an entrepreneur if you're willing to work in the ecosystem around you, to find talent, to find capital, to innovate, to find customers. All these things are possible because the successful entrepreneurs already in India. But each entrepreneur has to go through his own journey or her own journey. But when you go through it, no matter what the obstacles, the excitement, the satisfaction will be second to nothing compared to any other alternative that you have.
Get up in the morning early and go to bed late and hang around people who are interesting, creative, and fun. Fun is probably the most important thing you should seek in your life. Enjoy every day of your life. If you don't enjoy it, you should be doing something else. Because your time is the only thing that's not replaceable. Find something that really interests you. And don't doubt yourself. You're special. You're engineers. Not everyone can be an engineer. It's tough to be an engineer. But what we got at the end, and there's never really any end, is the ability to do things and see things that no one else is able to do. Big changes are difficult to do. But if you've been taught a particular way of doing something, vary it by a little bit and see if that is successful. Vary it by a little bit more. And pretty soon you say, well, I've made a reasonably big change, little by little by little. And if you do something that's a little bit and it's not working out, it's easy to back up and then go in a different direction. You know when it's right or when it's wrong. And if you don't know when it's right or it's wrong, it'll eventually come to you. You might have to step back 5 steps rather than 3 steps, but just do it.
You have to be authentic. I mean, you've got no hope if you try to pretend to be Reed Hastings or Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates or whoever you want to think your CEOs are that you've met. That is crazy. And you got to really get comfortable with yourself, your strengths and weaknesses. People are inspired by authenticity, and I'm just surprised how many people feel like they're acting or try to act. And you may be a really quiet person, and that's fine. But if you have that fierce will, that desire for the institution, the company to be great, and your own role in that is secondary, and you authentically express that in whatever ways you do.
The trick in life is not winning the first third of your life. It's winning the second and third third of your life. If the first third of your life, you're a Rhodes Scholar, Supreme Court clerk, you're everything, you're going to coast the rest of your life on your resume. And if you are doing all these wonderful things, you're All-American this, you're All-American that, you might coast. So how many great athletes have we seen, All-American athletes, who after they finish college or maybe a little bit in the pros, they don't accomplish much anything in their life. It's the people that keep plugging along, that the tortoises that kind of, at the time they get to be 68, they've accomplished something. So I tell young people, if you're not first in your class, you're not a great athlete, life isn't over for you. And as George Bush famously said when he gave the commencement address at Yale, all of you who are A students, congratulations. All of you who are B students, congratulations. All of you who are C students, you might be President of the United States.
But in the end, the thing that matters most to me, and if you think about it, I bet matters most to you, which is your family and your extended network of friends. In the end, that is super important. So while we get wrapped around the axle of doing whatever we're doing, it is really important to remember that that's what matters most. I'll say the other thing is perspective. And this has been one of the delights of being married to a neurosurgeon. Okay, what we do in business is important. It's incredibly important. It's important to the employees of HP, to our VARs, but no one gets hurt at HP. No one dies. And so remembering what's really important is, I think, critical.
It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishment the script. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.